She laughed in my face. Loud, sharp, deliberate, while everyone at the party pretended not to stare. "I could drop you right now, Mark," she said, draping herself over a man who wasn't me. They all expected me to swallow it, to smile like a beaten fool. Instead, I simply said, "Try it," and the room froze. Before we go on, make sure you subscribe, hit that like button, and leave a comment, because this story, you won't see the ending coming. It happened at a charity dinner, of all places. Candlelight, soft jazz, clinking glasses. The kind of event where everyone whispers politely and pretends their marriages are perfect. My wife, Sarah, thrived in those rooms. She had a talent for floating just above the floor, always glowing, always admired. I used to love watching her like that. Not anymore. That night, I stood near the bar, swirling ice in my bourbon, trying to focus on the music instead of the growing ache of suspicion that had lived in me for weeks. The hall smelled faintly of citrus and perfume, and laughter bounced off the marble like tiny shards. Mine wasn't among them. My role had quietly shifted from partner to prop, and I felt every inch of it. Across the room, Sarah held court in a shimmering gold dress, her hand casually resting on the forearm of a man named Cole Turner. Cole, with his perfect teeth, perfect tan, and the perfect talent for sniffing out other people's money. He leaned in every time she spoke, too close, too eager. She didn't push him away. She didn't even look guilty. I watched her tilt her head back, hair falling over her shoulder like she'd practiced it. I watched her let Cole whisper something that made her throw that brittle, glittering laugh into the air. And when their eyes drifted toward me, something inside her sharpened. Like she wanted the cut to land exactly where it would hurt most. I'd seen signs before tonight. Little ones. Changing passwords. Whispered phone calls. New friends who appeared out of nowhere. And the worst part, she talked to me less, but looked through me more. Still, I stayed quiet, listening, watching, measuring the space between who she once was and who she'd decided to become. When dinner was served, we sat at a round table with donors, city officials, and the kind of people who wore wealth the way others wear cologne. Sarah was electric that night, laughing too loud, touching my arm only when someone else was watching. Her champagne glass stayed full for exactly 3 minutes at a time. Cole was at the table beside ours, close enough that their conversations kept bleeding together to some point. She leaned across me, not to touch me, not to kiss me, but to call out to him. "Cole, you know what I tell everyone about Mark?" she said with that sugary, poisonous charm. "He's dependable, predictable. Honestly, I could leave him right now and he'd probably just apologize for being boring." The table laughed. I didn't. Inside, something finally clicked into place. Not anger, not shock, a kind of cold clarity. Like finding the blueprint to a building you'd lived in blind. I set my fork down. Slowly, deliberately. My pulse didn't jump. My voice didn't shake. I just turned my head toward her and said, quietly but clearly enough for the tables around us to hear, "Try it." Her smile froze mid-performance. The laughter died in a single synchronized breath. Even Cole, smug and polished, blinked, like he'd just realized he'd stepped into the wrong room. Sarah stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. Her lipstick-perfect lips parted, but no words came out. For one perfect second, the ground shook beneath her confidence. And I felt nothing. No panic, no regret. Just a silence so sharp it belonged in a thriller. But before you think this is the moment everything fell apart, you need to understand something. Moments like these don't appear out of thin air. They grow. They rot. And sometimes they come with warning signs so obvious you only miss them because you're trying not to look. My warning sign arrived 3 weeks earlier, on an ordinary Wednesday afternoon. A day I should have forgotten but didn't. A day I walked into our home early and heard my wife say a sentence that snapped the frame of my life clean in half. She wasn't laughing then, and neither was I. 3 weeks before that charity dinner, I came home earlier than planned. It was one of those pale, quiet afternoons when the sky looks washed clean and the whole world feels honest. I remember thinking it would be good to surprise Sarah, maybe take her out to dinner, remind ourselves who we used to be. I stepped inside our house, expecting music, or the scent of one of her candles, or at least the rhythm of her footsteps. Instead, I heard her voice drifting from the upstairs hall, low, sharp, and threaded with something I hadn't heard from her in a long time. Excitement, but not for me. I moved quietly, leaning against the wall just before the doorway to her walk-in closet. I could see a sliver of her reflection in the mirror. Phone pressed to her ear, smile twisting the corners of her mouth. "No, Karen, he has no clue," she whispered. "Mark doesn't notice anything unless it's written on an invoice. He thinks paying the bills is the same as paying attention." She laughed softly, but it wasn't the laugh she used at dinner parties. It was smaller, meaner. "Cole understands me. He actually listens. I can't leave yet, not until everything falls into place. You don't walk away from one bank until the other one's ready." She paused, adjusting a bracelet I had bought her for our anniversary. "Yes, the transfers are going through. Little amounts. He never checks the statements. Men like him just assume loyalty is guaranteed. He builds me a life and expects me to stay grateful for it." My pulse didn't race. My hands didn't shake. Instead, a cold, steady stillness settled into me, like stepping into a room where the temperature drops 20 degrees. She kept talking, going on about a fund she'd set up, something she'd titled after an art project she'd once pretended to care about. She even joked about how easy it was to move money when your husband trusts you. I recorded the last minute of it, not because I wanted revenge, but because I needed the truth to exist outside my own mind. When she hung up, I moved silently down the stairs, placed the flowers I'd brought home on the entry table, and walked out. I didn't leave a note. I didn't text her. I didn't rage. Rage is loud, and loud things get sloppy. I checked into a hotel, ordered nothing, turned on no lights, and sat on the edge of the unfamiliar bed, listening to the hum of the air conditioner. And in that quiet, I realized something that felt heavier than betrayal. I wasn't surprised. Somewhere along the line, I had stopped being her partner and become her platform. A way up, a way out, a way into rooms she wanted, wearing dresses she wanted, laughing at jokes she didn't understand but wanted to be seen enjoying. Once that truth settled in my bones, the next step was simple. In the morning, I met with my attorney, Stephen Grant, a man I'd known since we were young. He listened to the recording without raising an eyebrow. When it ended, he sighed, folded his hands, and said, "What do you want to walk away with, Mark? Just tell me that." "Peace," I said, "and everything that's mine." We got to work, quietly, efficiently, methodically, while she slept in our bed, while she shopped with my credit cards, while she hosted brunches and posted photos of her perfect life. Stephen and I pulled every thread holding her illusion together, restructured my business assets into separate entities, closed or froze accounts she didn't know I controlled, collected documentation of every unauthorized transfer she had made, even found the private account she thought she'd hidden, labeled under the name of a fictional consulting firm. I moved my personal belongings, family heirlooms, old photographs, books, from the house one by one, storing them in a small apartment rented under my company. She never noticed. She noticed new dresses and new restaurants, but not the disappearance of a watch my father gave me or the painting my mother left me. At night, I acted the part she expected. Quiet, distant, worn-out husband. She thought she was winning. She thought she was outgrowing me. And the more arrogant she grew, the calmer I became. A week before the charity dinner, She humiliated me in front of longtime colleagues, mocking my work ethic, my routines, even my love of restoring historic buildings. She did it laughing, one hand on the shoulder of the wife of a man whose respect had mattered to me for 20 years. People looked away politely, embarrassed for both of us. I just smiled, a small, tight, patient smile, because by then, every piece was already in place. All I needed was the right moment, and that moment arrived at the charity dinner when she delivered her final insult, daring me to crumble. But I didn't. I simply said, "Try it," and for the first time in years, she was the one left standing in silence. What happened next changed everything. When I told her, "Try it," the whole room seemed to tilt, as if the air itself had shifted sides. Sarah's smile cracked like a glass dropped on stone. She waited for me to backpedal, to soften it, to save her performance. But I didn't give her a breath. I stepped forward into the warm light of the chandelier, the bourbon still in my hand, and spoke clearly enough that even the tables behind us stopped talking. "Go on, Sarah. Be with Cole. You've already been auditioning for the part." Her eyes blew wide, searching desperately for a joke in my expression. There wasn't one. Cole's grin collapsed. He straightened in his seat as if someone had just pulled a wire inside him. "Mark, man, maybe we should talk privately." "Oh, we will," I said. "In court." A ripple of whispers spread like wind across tall grass. I reached into my jacket, not rushing, not theatrical, just steady. I pulled out a single sheet of paper and placed it on the white tablecloth in front of her. "Those are the divorce filings. My attorney submitted them this morning." A faint gasp echoed from somewhere to the left. Sarah's face drained of color. "What?" she whispered, her voice tiny now, stripped of glamour. "You can't be serious." "I'm very serious," I said. "Your belongings, only the ones you purchased yourself, were packed earlier today. They should be at your mother's by now." She stared at me as though the floor had vanished beneath her. You packed my things? You're welcome to whatever was actually yours," I said, which wasn't much. Cole took a step back, eyes darting toward the exit. "Don't go anywhere, Cole," I said calmly. "I'm sure Sarah will need you, especially now that the joint accounts are frozen and the cards were canceled an hour ago." He blinked, swallowed, and managed a weak, "This isn't my business." "Of course it isn't," I said. "It never was. But she thought it was. She thought you were her rescue plan." His face twisted into something ugly and embarrassed. He looked at Sarah, saw the ruins setting into her features, and made the quickest retreat I've ever seen, vanishing into the crowd like someone fleeing a burning building. Sarah lunged toward him, but stumbled. She caught herself on the edge of a chair, trembling so hard the sequins on her dress shivered. When she turned back to me, her expression was a mixture of terror and disbelief. "Mark, please, don't do this here." "You did this," I said. No anger, no raised voice, just the truth placed gently in her hands like a weight she could no longer carry. "I'm simply done pretending." She opened her mouth to argue, but no sound came, just a small, broken exhale. People stood frozen around us. Guests, donors, colleagues, watching the queen of the evening crumble. I placed my empty glass on the table, nodded politely to the stunned onlookers, and walked out of the hall. I didn't hear her call my name. I didn't look back to see if she tried. I left the building, stepped into the cool night air, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. The next week was a storm, mostly on her side. Hundreds of texts, voicemails that spiraled from fury to pleading to self-pity. She tried everything. Apologies, threats, begging, bargaining, denial. I didn't reply to a single one. Meanwhile, her shiny circle of friends evaporated. Without my money smoothing her path, she wasn't interesting anymore. Cole blocked her number within 2 days. She tried fighting the divorce, but Stephen dismantled her case piece by piece. The prenup she'd signed without reading, the proof of her unauthorized transfers, the recording of her bragging to her friend. Even 2 contractors from a past event came forward about her unpaid bills. In the end, the judge had no sympathy. She walked away with almost nothing, just what the prenup required. Her art collection was liquidated to cover her debts. The villa sold. The life she'd used as leverage simply dissolved. Months passed. People told me she was living in a modest apartment with her mother, working a basic office job she hated, selling off her designer things one by one. They said she looked older, quieter, as if she was carrying something heavy all the time. I didn't smile at the news. I didn't celebrate. I didn't hate her. I'd already spent enough emotion on a woman who saw my love as a stepping stone. I simply accepted it as part of the architecture of consequences, something she built herself brick by careless brick. As for me, my life became simpler, warmer. My home finally felt like mine again. My work flourished without the weight of her judgment. People asked if I missed her, and the answer was always the same. I missed who I thought she was, not who she turned out to be. One evening, sitting on the balcony of my apartment, watching the city lights glow against the dark, I realized something that settled into me like truth carved into stone. You don't always need to raise your voice to protect your dignity. Sometimes silence does all the talking, and sometimes 2 quiet words, try it, are enough to rebuild a life from the ground up. If you want more stories like this, make sure you subscribe, hit that like button, and leave a comment.